All right, so welcome to a series of videos that I am producing on different styles of essays or papers that you might be asked to complete while you're in a college or university writing class. I know I already have a video that sort of broadly talks about some of the different types of writing that you do in college. I think I mentioned essays, research papers, literary reviews, lab reports, things like that. And I may have mentioned some of these things as sort of subsets of the essay genre. But we're getting a lot of students coming in that are unfamiliar with some of the types of essays they're being asked to write. So I thought I would start with the essay type that I usually had my students start with, which is descriptive writing, or the descriptive essay. So there are a couple of ways that you may find yourself writing a descriptive essay. Description is really good in all forms of writing. Oftentimes you'll have a teacher or a professor that will, I know back when I was a student, I would get these notes in the margins of my paper. Now we would probably have like track changes and comments that people would leave on Word docs, but I would get these little comments that would say something like, "So what?" or "explain," or "more info," or something to that extent. Generally some teachers' shorthand for helping you to figure out, where you had been a little lacking in your writing. Usually, they required you to qualify or to prove or to give more detail for something that you had written. So what I did to illustrate this, and it's really important to understand descriptive writing because number one, it makes your writing a lot more interesting to read. If you have a lot of sentences in an essay that, like for example, if somebody asked me to describe the teams that I'm a fan of in sports, like if I just kind of went Carolina Panthers, UNC, Minnesota sports teams, stuff like that, then you don't really get a rich description of what the heck I'm talking about. Because if I were to say like UNC, for the University of North Carolina, well, that obviously I'm a fan of that because that's where I went to school. But there are sports that I follow, like football and basketball and maybe baseball or something like that. But then like women's gymnastics or men's diving, I probably don't follow all that much. So it's helpful for your readers to be able to understand, with specifics, what exactly it is you're talking about. Like if I say all Minnesota sports teams, do I mean college? Do I mean pro? Because I'm not much of a hockey fan, but by saying all the teams in Minnesota, one might make the assumption that I am, a Minnesota Wild fan. I don't dislike them or anything like that. I'm just not that much into watching hockey. So I tend to watch the Vikings, the football team, and the Timberwolves, the NBA basketball team. So anyway, when we take a look at what we mean by description and by detail, even if you've given some, I would guarantee you can always add a little bit more description in there. So let's take a look at "the truck drove by me." So if I was telling you a story and I was like, a truck drove by me, or a truck almost hit me, or a truck cut me off or something, most of us are going to come up in our heads with some type of generic version of a truck, but you're kind of left to wonder, like, okay, was it a new truck? Was it an old truck? Was it a red truck? Was it a blue truck? Was it a semi-tractor trailer truck, or was it, just a normal little pickup truck or something like that? So by adding more detail, we eliminate some of those questions. So instead, we have the new red lowered truck screeched past me. So lowered, in this case, I just mean it's one of those ones, not necessarily like a low rider, but it's riding, lower, maybe just in the back with the front cocked up or something like that, than a fresh off the line Dodge Ram or an F-150 or something like that. So I added new red and lowered to help my audience be able to picture the kind of truck. And then I didn't just say it drove past me, I said it screeched past me. So, obviously like it was going somewhere in a hurry, or it needed to have some work done or something like that. But you get the impression that it was not so much a truck's driving by me. It's more like, whoa, that truck drove by me, kind of a thing. So adding more adjectives, things like new, red, lowered, and a descriptor to how the truck moved past me helps my reader understand and visualize better what it is that I'm trying to convey to you. So the main way that we get more detail is through adding adjectives, or we might be adding adverbs to indicate location or something like that. But at the end of the day, you're adding descriptive language to help your readers see your vision a little bit more easily. So let's take a look. And this is what I'll do kind of for all of them, is give you some potential essay prompts that I've either given or I might give, and that way you can kind of learn how to recognize what type of essay you're writing when you get the assignment. A lot of times your professors and teachers will just tell you, but in this particular instance I wanted to give you some examples. So one that I would consider doing would be something like, describe your favorite toy from childhood. So if you were going to describe your favorite toy from childhood, was it an action figure? Was it a doll? Was it a stuffed animal? Was it an easy bake oven? Was it, a game system of some kind, like a PS2, PS3, PS4, PS5, an Xbox One, an Xbox 360? Was it super old school and it was something like you got your cousin's old Sega Dreamcast or Nintendo 64 or PlayStation 2 or something like that, whatever it might be. For me, personally, if I was going to describe this, I would probably talk about, I was really into comic books when I was a little kid, so I would say probably my little X-Man Wolverine action figure with the semi-retractable spring-loaded claw kind of things probably would have been my favorite. Probably would have described how he was dressed, or how long his claws were, or perhaps who he was in case people were unfamiliar with, Marvel Comics or anything like that. Or I might talk about the stuffed animal that my grandmother gave me, or, it could have been anything. For you, maybe it was, I know for my younger brother, it was, he had one of those Casio keyboards that came preloaded with a bunch of like instrumental tracks, mostly like old, unpopular stuff, for you to learn to play along with and things like that. So, but anyway, whatever it is, talk about shape, talk about size, talk about color, talk about what they do, or where you first, heard about them from when you wanted the toy. Was it a fad at school? Was it, something that was passed down to you by your cousin or your neighbor or an older sibling or something like that. Whatever it might be. But you really want to use a lot of description in there to help develop your idea, so someone can almost feel like they're holding their toy in your hands, or your toy in their hands. So a second one, this is something I started doing, as we get further and further away from 2020 and 2021, depending on what your experience was with COVID and everything like that. Certain places weren't as affected as other places. But one thing that just about everybody had to do was stave off some type of boredom. Like, you had to find something to do, especially if you were, trapped at the house all day or something like that. Or you only had the ability to order stuff from Amazon because you couldn't go to the store, or, whatever it might be. So I would ask students to tell me about a hobby that they started doing, or some type of, exercise treatment, or if they started cooking, or if they started writing or painting, or, whatever it might be. I had a lot of students that were had started like growing little nurseries and topiaries and things like that in their bedrooms and dorm rooms and things like that. So a lot of people grew plants. A lot of people got pets. A lot of people found relationships, ended relationships. My wife got insanely into puzzles. For me, I started baking sourdough bread. I started going on extremely long walks with my dog, just because there wasn't anything else to do. So, and my dog is like I don't know if you've seen her in any of the videos. If you've watched a few of them, you've probably seen her, but she's a little tiny pit bull that's just like full of energy. So I would walk her for 4, 5, 6 miles some days just to kind of tire her out a little bit. But when I would describe that for my students in, an example essay or an example outline or something like that, what we would have happen is I would talk to them about the trees, and about the asphalt, and just about all of the different things. So it wasn't just enough to tell them the hobby. I had to really sell them on the experience and explain it in full 360 degrees. All right, and then the final one would be, and this is something I did every year. Tell me what your favorite meal or restaurant was. So, whatever that might be, talk about the entire experience of, maybe it's something your grandmother cooked for you, or your mom cooked for you, or your dad cooked for you, or your siblings made you, special cookies or cupcakes or something for your birthday, or, what for whatever reason you really love to go to Olive Garden or Red Lobster, or you really love to go to Chick-fil-A, or, whatever that is. But don't just tell us about the food. Tell us about the tradition. Tell us about the overall experience. If you're going to a restaurant, what is the service like? Like, what is it like from you getting into your car, driving there, getting out, walking in? What is it like to be greeted? What is it like to, what's their menu like? What are your favorite things on it? Do you do anything specific to, like, for example, if I went to Chick-fil-A, I always get Polynesian sauce because that's my favorite. I would dip anything in it. But for other people, their thing about Chick-fil-A is that they're real specific about, they want the pickle juice from the pickles to actually be on the bun, but they don't want the actual pickles. So they never order the sandwich without pickles. They just simply take them off when they get it. So, little strange, little specific things like that really make a difference and really connect you to your audience in a way that is not normally achieved if you were just saying like, yeah, I went to Chick-fil-A, you know, as opposed to, oh, I went to Chick-fil-A and I did this and this and this, and I never thought about doing this, or they have this new thing. Like, I don't know how many of you have seen this. My wife saw it and I saw it on TV for the first time last night, but like Papa John's is doing this new thing where they have like crispy Parmesan cheese that's on the underside of the pizza crust. Like, that's a big difference in how you would describe something like that to someone than just like, I got a pizza. It's like, oh, I got a pizza, but it had cheese on the bottom. And then you'd have to explain that a little bit because that's not normal. So when it comes to descriptive writing, I mean, all writing for the most part should be somewhat descriptive. But when you're talking about being given a prompt like one of these, they're specifically asking you, don't just tell me a story. Tell me a good story with a lot of details in it. All right, so when it comes to writing these types of essays, make sure that you are giving as full of a picture of the experience, the story, the whatever it might be, to your readers so that they can feel like they're fully immersed, that they are almost tasting what you tasted, holding what you held, that kind of a thing. All right? Have a good one. We will be moving forward with other videos in this series talking about the different types of essays that you might encounter. So be on the lookout for those next videos. Have a good one.